What's going on, Trophy Kids? We got an awesome one here for you today. I sit down with Mike Randle. We talk a little bit about how his career got started and the challenges he's seen as this business has grown, and then we get right into college hoops talk. It's an awesome interview. I think you're very much going to enjoy this. We did do it late Friday night, so we missed all the craziness of Saturday, but don't worry. We'll get you caught up to speed on Thursday's podcast, so make sure to come back for that one. But I think you're really going to enjoy this interview, and let's go. And welcome, Trophy Kids. Today we have a special guest, Mike Randle. You may have heard him from Screen of the Screening podcast. You might have found him through his freelancing work at the Action Network and other industries. I mean, I was looking up your bio. I feel like you've written or gone kind of everywhere. But Mike Randle's on today. How are you doing today, good sir?
It's doing great, man. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's the grind. I mean, that's the only way we can do this, right? Is to grind and to love it. And you're like myself, staying up late, producing, editing podcasts, and you learn as you go. But it's a pleasure, man. I appreciate sitting down and talking for a few minutes.
Yeah, that's the one thing, as you start to get in this, the more and more I do it, it's just like the hours, everything. You find out everybody's kind of written everywhere. Everybody's up at late hours. So I appreciate you spending your Friday night or a chunk of it here with us today. Speaking of that, how did you kind of get into this business? From what I was able to find, it seems like you've been on this in a long time. How did Mike Randle kind of get into this? What is your origin story with this?
The origin story is really, really funny, Nate. I decided at some point, I said, look, I want to get involved in fantasy football, college basketball, betting, etc. And I said, all right, let me make a Twitter account. And I made one back in 2016. I called myself Fantasy Warrior Mike. Just the stupidest name of all time, but I didn't know any better. And so my first article ever was for Last Word on Sports. Great site. If anyone's looking to write, they're just great people. They'll let you write whatever you want. They edit stuff for you. They get out real quick. And I wrote why Ezekiel Elliott should not be one of the top picks in the NFL draft, how he's going to be a bust. So that just shows you, like, horrific article, obviously completely wrong. Yeah. I think I used, all the new writers use the stupid phrase caveat emptor. So like, I thought I was being cool. Caveat emptor and Ezekiel Elliott. You can look it up. It's a god awful article. But from that point on, I just started writing, and you write more and you go on social media, and Colin Kelly, who's over at RotoViz now, who's going to be full-time, great guy, said, I'm looking for people to help us edit podcasts. And I said, I'll do it. I don't know what I'm doing. And the guy literally sat down with me and sent me videos that were like 30 minutes long. And I liked it. It was a hobby. Like, everybody has hobbies. This was mine. And it sort of evolved into that, where now it's like doing all this stuff. But that's how it started. So anyone out there who's listening, like, you can do it if I can do it. I wrote a horrific article that made no sense. It was completely false. And here we are.
If it's fair, I'll give you one. I think, first article was ranking the top 5 quarterbacks from the Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen. I said the number one guy, game ready, Josh Rosen. So
yes, I love Josh Rosen. I told you, cerebral.
Yeah,
cerebral.
Could step totally right in and be fine. So it feels like that's just how you start. You write a bad article and then you go from there.
Yes. And it was always, my first love was always college basketball. My 2 best friends and I would get together after college because we wanted something to help us hang out, and we would watch March Madness. So I said, what else would flow with college basketball / NBA? And it was football, and that's how it started.
There you go. I like that. Now, you've been in the business for a little while now, and it's been ever changing. I mean, we're onboarding now sports gambling. It feels like a new state every time. There are more content creators out there every day. With those changes, how have you adapted, and how have you kind of navigated the field to really continue to break out and kind of give yourself new opportunities to grow?
It's just about seeing what's out there, and it's all connections. Like in life, I tell my kids, it's all who you know. So if you see opportunities to do stuff and it may not be paying, who cares? Because if you were getting paid, it probably wouldn't be that much anyway. But I definitely got the right connections with the right people, because RotoViz is a pretty big fantasy site, and they taught me how to edit podcasts, Audacity, free. I don't know how Audacity is free, but a great editing tool. I looked up online what mics to use. I found the Blue Yeti. My buddy and I came over and started the Screener podcast. We sat at this table with this mic on different sides of the table, talking and not talking. That's how we did it. And that's how it started. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, somebody's actually listening to this. And you go from there. So that's really it is write as much as you can, because the written word matters. Do exactly what you're doing. You look like you have better setup than I do over there. And learn how to edit stuff. And that's it. And then you put it out. Video is king, and people pick it up. And then you get opportunities.
I like that. And that's kind of the way I sort of found you guys in the Screen podcast, which I hadn't heard of before, but we both partner with a similar app called the Ravon Sports app. Mm-hmm. And that's how I came across the Screener podcast. I apologize there. And let me tell you, one of the better finds, for those of you who have not heard it, one of my co-hosts who wasn't able to join has been a fan of yours for a little while now. Incredible depth of knowledge in college basketball. Perfect time nowadays. So I was very happy to get you on. For all those listening, make sure you check this out. But a little bit on the Screener podcast. College hoops seems to be kind of your bread and butter, because when I listen to that, I think it speaks volumes on how well you kind of have a depth of knowledge around the sport. How did you kind of get to that point? Kind of, I guess, should we say, is that your bread and butter?
I would say it is. It started because I loved watching. My best friend and I, we played basketball together all through high school, and we loved watching hoops, and we loved March Madness. I would say the first one I remember was Syracuse, Indiana in '87. I'm going way back. Okay. I love that Syracuse team. Derek Coleman was on there, and they lost, and that bothered me. And then where the one before that, actually, that changed everything was 1985. It was Villanova, Georgetown. And my dad watched it with me, but he made me go to bed because it was a school night and the game started at 9 on a Monday night. And I woke up because I was rooting for Villanova. And I woke up and he hung these on toilet paper outside my room. And I realized when I woke up that they won, and I was hooked. So March Madness hooked me in. I always tear up during One Shining Moment. My wife and I came out in our wedding to One Shining Moment.
That's some dedication.
So like all that is true. And that's where it started. So we look forward to it. And listen, Nate, it's really life, isn't it? It's March Madness. There's a beginning, there's an end, there's hope, there's despair. And in the end, you reflect on it and say, wow, that was really, really great. So always. That's where it started. The V's, my dad, toilet paper. Still mad he made me go to bed watching Villanova hold the ball. Okay, we're going pre-shot clock.
Yep.
Hold the ball, and then they upset Georgetown, and that was it.
Incredible. I like that. There's actually those two teams you mentioned, Syracuse and Villanova, is kind of what got me hooked. First college basketball game I ever went to, my cousin was a student at Villanova. We got tickets to go into the student section for Villanova Syracuse with Scotty Reynolds, I think freshman year. Incredible game. And from that moment on, I was hooked. Like, I am very hardcore into the kind of football scene, but from that moment on, I was like, I love this sport. This is exciting. The atmosphere is amazing. And then March Madness rolls in. That first weekend is arguably the best weekend in sports. Incredible. Let's talk a little college hoops. This year, I'm getting back into it right now, transitioning out of football. My biggest takeaway, and correct me if it feels wrong, every year it feels like there's always kind of like that one or two teams that you go, all right, it's these guys versus the field. But this year it feels like it is wide open. Do you feel like this year's kind of depth is actually depth, and there are a bunch of teams that could really run the table when we get to March and are kind of proving that right now?
Yes. What I love about this year is I find that there is a run of teams that can go through. It's not, yes, Gonzaga, fine. Auburn, Kentucky, who I think is number 2 right now, Mary Gonzaga, can make it. But it's all about the matchups. There's so many times Russ Smith with Louisville, where I watched a bunch of games and he was like 2 of 40 from the field because he had no conscience. And I'm like, they're not going far. They're not going far. And sure enough, I look at the bracket and I'm getting take lock in my head. And I'm like, no, I'm not, even though their draw looks good, even though no. And sure enough, they win national title with Russ Smith. So it's all about, that's why everyone's asked me, they said, what do you think? Who do you think? I have no idea. I could literally tell you that Gonzaga is going out in the second round if they had like an Illinois Chicago from last year matchup, like Illinois did. Okay. I could Loyola Chicago. Sorry, Loyola Chicago. I could absolutely tell you that I could see a lower team that I love, like a Murray State, making the Final Four. I could see. It depends on the matchups, but yes, I think it is very wide open because you do not. Besides Gonzaga, you do not have any dominant team, and we've said it before. We've seen Gonzaga. Besides last year, they've had trouble sometimes. Sometimes they get upset because they grind their teeth on the WCC. But sure as heck, they look good this year.
Do you think that is what it is with Gonzaga, that it's just the fact that they are playing in such a weaker conference that they kind of lose that momentum they maybe gained from the pre-conference? Because you look at their pre-conference schedule, they're playing top-tier basketball teams, and then they get into the conference. It's only St. Mary's that you're really kind of grinding your teeth against. Do you think that's the reason they've had trouble breaking through? Because it feels like every year we talk about them being this dominant force coming to the tournament, and outside of last year, they always fizzle out.
I don't want, it sounds like I'm being negative, and I'm not. It's just, yes, they play an incredible non-conference schedule. 100% they do. But they don't play those teams for several months. So I can't come up with another reason. I mean, they've been to 2 finals. They should have beat North Carolina if Kenny Meeks was called out of bounds, which he should have been.
Fair.
And they could have won last year for sure, but they ran into a buzzsaw with Baylor. Fine. Jalen Suggs got foul trouble, whatever it was. I forget.
Yeah.
But I think that they have a Hall of Fame coach. They have a great program. They have size. They have talent. They've gotten top 5 players in the country now. They're due. And the only thing is, I would tell you that Jerry Tipton from Kentucky, the Kentucky beat writer, we do our beat writer preview series, he reminded me of this. He said, because I say to him, is there any pressure for Cal to win a second? Like, when you go to the barber shop down in Kentucky, are they sitting around and actually telling me that, like, Calipari's got to go? Like, are they really saying that given his success? And he said they are. He goes, but they shouldn't be, because how many has Bill Self won?
I was just about to say, there are so many coaches around exactly
right,
like that.
And I used to make fun of Bill Self on the podcast, and Gus laughs all the time. When they beat Memphis that year with Mario Chalmers, do you remember what Self did? He wiped his brow.
Yeah.
Like, it was almost like, thank God. Like, I felt badly for him. Like, he should be jumping up and down like Jim Valvano running around. He wiped his brow because he was like, I had to do that. That's not fun. So it's hard to win a title. So obviously Few's a legend, no doubt about it. I just would love to see them break through because they deserve it. They really do. And I don't want to hold the WCC against them. I don't, because I love that. But there's no other reason other than, why haven't they gotten over the hump? Because they should. Like, they have so much talent, and they play great, and they're well coached. So you just figure the law of averages, they'll get one at some point. I hope they do.
I would think so. And that's the thing that I come back to. Initially, when I first heard that take, I was like, oh, that's silly. But the more I think about it, you do think about it. Like the Villanovas, they get their teeth cut in the Big East day in and day out. They're playing tough games. You go to the Big Ten, all those teams are playing tough teams throughout their conference schedule. It is the one common denominator that Gonzaga just doesn't have, which is interesting. And that is the weird thing about college basketball coaches too, because like just being really good and relevant doesn't seem to be enough at some of these schools when it is so incredibly hard in a tournament setting. Be like Jay Wright if you were getting mad at him before he won his title at Villanova. It's like they keep pushing through and don't get it.
Well, Nate, Jay Wright tells a story all the time. After a couple of years, I remember seeing him at a clinic once before he became JJ Wright. And he was saying, like, I left a game one night, and I looked at my assistant, and I said, we got to find another job so we can get fired. Yeah. And that's how fragile it is. All you can ask for from your head coach is sustained success. I wouldn't care if I was a college president. You're going to win a title. Yes. But like, if you can get me every year to a conference tournament championship or battling, I'll take my chances. Because at some point, right in the tournament, you'll make a Final Four. Yeah. Houston made one with Samson. Like, if VCU makes a run with Shaka, George made, like, it'll happen. And Few, obviously, multiple Final Fours, 2 championships, great. But that's what you have. If you have sustained success, you have a rare coach.
I like that. I feel like, I wasn't around during these eras, but I feel like that's what sort of made the Big East one of the more top-tier conferences back then, is those coaches felt like they got time to build a program, have some sustainability, and that created great wars. You speak about Calipari. One note before I move on to I want to talk a little bit of the Big East as we're teasing it here. But Calipari, this team, when I first started kind of watching this season, they just stuck out as a team of maybe not his best team, but they seemed really, really good. They've had some injuries. Do you think that team in Calipari, this is a year where it's kind of like you need to get going and make it deep into the tournament? Maybe not to be fired, but this team has sustainability here.
Yes, because we've looked at Kentucky's team, and the one thing that they've usually struggled with, I'd say, is 3-point shooting. They always start the year off and their 3-point percentage is not great, but then they get it going and they have everything else. If you look at them on KenPom, their numbers look like a bingo board. I mean, they have green all over the place. They are only shooting 35.8% from 3-point range on the season, but in SEC play, they're almost 38%. This is what Cal does. They don't turn the ball over this year, which they've had trouble with, and they've had Wheeler and Washington injured for a lot of this. They're the number one team in the SEC, which is an elite conference, obviously, in adjusted offensive efficiency, 3-point percentage. They don't turn the ball over. They rebound, and they play defense. They're top 20 defensively. Cal knows how to do it. He's done a great job. LSU seems to be his kryptonite, as is Rick Barnes, by the way. I never heard you hear this. I never heard this phrase until we had somebody on the podcast. It's Barnes always beats Calipari. Calipari always beats Pearl. Pearl always beats Barnes. And like that has held true. I don't know what it is, but they can take it all. To me, they are number 2. I would put them behind Gonzaga or right there with them and slightly ahead of Arizona. Right now is where I would put them. I think they are the real deal. The SEC is fun. They're 12-3 overall. They got Arkansas away tomorrow. Get your popcorn ready for that. Then a screener favorite, Kermit Davis down Mississippi's had some bad luck. He got them at home on senior night, and then Florida away. So yeah, that's what he has a style. He gets these guys to buy in, and they're all coming. I was just talking to my wife before. We're watching Devin Booker. Devin Booker didn't even start at Kentucky,
which is insane.
I mean, like. Right. It is like that. That's a talent, like what he does. And it's impressive and it's worked. But this year, watch out, man, because they're making threes.
Yeah, that's a very good point and a good thing for the listeners to know. The SEC is funny because, you always think of it as a football league, but the basketball there, it feels like it's really elevated the last couple years. I don't know if that feels wrong. I mean, they've always had good teams, as we know. The Florida's back when they were running it. Tennessee's always been a good program, Kentucky, obviously, but it feels like the conference as a whole has gotten really healthy, and the ACC has almost gone down a little bit. It's funny how those kind of boats are rising and some are sinking there.
Yeah, and the SEC is fun. When I was growing up, I used to watch the AFC West games, like they were on with Dick Enberg, and it was the NBC. It had the like sort of saturation on the TV, and you knew it was a West Coast game. Yeah. But those were fun. Like Charger Chief games were fun. Raider Charger game. The SEC is a fun league. Like who is not going to watch Kentucky Arkansas tomorrow? I mean, JD Note could go for 40, okay, and Sheba is gonna have like 30 and 30. I mean, like it's a great game. So it's just a fun league to watch.
I agree. Do you take any credence to the fact that I've heard a couple of people say it? These fast-paced teams, which seems to be a lot of the SEC teams, sort of have a tougher time in the tournament because it is like if you get a little bumped off your route, they have a hard time correcting. Do you give any kind of credence to that, or do you think that's all kind of a little bogus and they're fine as a whole? Because it does seem like that's the brand of basketball they play compared to other conferences. It's fast.
Yeah, I think that.
Let's go,
Nate. I think the problem is that those teams tend not to play defense.
Yeah,
that's the problem. Fair. And so look at North Carolina. I mean, we joked about old Roy. He came in and won 3 titles in North Carolina, and they made a living off a secondary break. So you can run. It's just, can you lock down when you have to? I remember Roy on the way to one of his titles had trouble with Harvard in round 1. So those teams that play that style that don't lock down in the half court, yes, can be upset. But you look at a team like Kentucky, top 20 in adjusted defense. They hold their opponents to 30% from 3-point range. That's 28th, and they're ridiculously tough inside the arc. That's fine. You can run and do that. Now, not everybody can because they don't have the talent that Kentucky does, but that's the secret sauce. So I don't think running is bad. I think running with reckless abandon and giving up layups is bad because all of a sudden you're going to find yourself down by 10 in the tournament and you're not going to be able to run as much anymore. And you're going to have to play defense. And now you're not in your comfort zone. That's where these teams get in trouble.
That makes sense to me. I mean, I think that's a fair breakdown of that because I heard that the other day. And I was like, you know what? That does kind of feel true. It also feels kind of true, which I think is something that Providence is getting a little, I think the takes have gotten a little out of control with their luck factor, because I watched the game and I've heard the podcast where you guys were breaking it down. Yeah, there's a luck factor there, but every good team has a little bit of luck factor. I look at that team and I go, you know what? These guys are cool, calm, and collective under pressure. Like, this is the type of team you want for the tournament. But of course, everybody goes, well, these are the teams that fall out in the first weekend. They're easy upsets. Mm-hmm. Do you think that takes kind of gotten, I sort of know the answer because I've listened to your podcast, but for our listeners who maybe not have heard it, do you give credence to that? Like, is that not kind of getting out of hand with this luck factor and people are overlooking Providence right now?
Well, you've probably heard me be uber sarcastic on the pod. And my argument is I want a balance, like Mr. Miyagi. I want the balance. Don't get so lost in the metrics that you miss the obvious. And the line I've used, which I know you've heard, is you start 10 feet from a door and you go halfway. Mathematically, you never reach the door if you go to halfway every time. No, you do, because you eventually get there. Yeah. So I hate when people get lost in the metrics and don't look at the obvious, which is what's happening in Providence, or the other way where they're just totally disregarding mathematical sense. I don't like that. I get the issue with Providence, that their numbers aren't great. Their offensive efficiency isn't fantastic. They don't turn people over. They play at a slow pace. Nate Watson is not your typical big. He's not going 15 and 12, right? And he sits for 4 minutes and they play Croswell. I don't know why, but anyway, but at this point, they're good. I don't want to hear about it anymore. And I put this out on Twitter the other day. They're going to win this game against Creighton tomorrow without Nemhard on the court. They're going to win a Big East title. They're going to lose in the semifinals of the Big East tournament and then get upset in the round of 32. And everybody's going to say, I told you so. Well, you probably lost hundreds of dollars betting against them. So you didn't tell me anything. I was there when Duke lost to VCU in round one. Providence has had an amazing year. They're going to win their first regular season Big East title. Ed Cooley, amazing job. And they know how to win close games. How many threes do we need to see Jared Bynum shoot from 5 feet behind the arc before you realize he's good? They're good. That's it.
As a Xavier fan, that triple overtime game was
a rough game.
Terrible for my health. And that man, it'd be nice if they could miss every once in a while, because it did feel like, oh, here we go again every single time. Could not put them away.
No, and I think I was talking about this with my wife, because we have some connection with Mania. We know the Manias, and Justin's a great kid. All I can tell you is as much as, some people say, well, doesn't score enough. Folks, the kid would run up and down the street in the snow. Like that's the type of kid he is. Love so that. He is what it is with him. And he's a great defender as well. But I think Scruggs is an NBA player. I don't know what you think. I know he can drive you crazy, but he's big. He hits big shots. He does it all. And he just got tired, Nate. Yeah. He just got tired. You could tell he was grabbing at his shorts, but it was an amazing game to watch, but not for a Xavier person, I'm sure.
No, we needed that win so badly, because it was one of those things. And I feel bad. I've been a big Steele defender early in the season, because I'm on the mindset of it's his fourth year. It's his prove it year. He's done a great job recruiting. The X's and O's maybe haven't been great. The roster rotations have been head-scratching at times. But, let's give him the year. Let's keep the negativity out of the program. That is not what the Xavier fan base has been going with. But DePaul broke me. And then St. John's kicked me while down. And now I'm like Sweden. I've just kind of backed off. I'm going to see how it plays out and then go from there. But it's been tough as a Xavier fan. Do you have any hope for my Xavier team at this point? Can you give me something that gives me a little shimmer of hope right now?
Well, let's see. If you run the table, you're 20-10 and you're 10-9 in the Big. Now that should get you in.
I agree.
I think you beat Seton Hall home. St. John's away. St. John's very vulnerable. Turn the ball over 5 million times. You got to beat Georgetown at home. Okay, but you win those 3. You're 20-10. You're 10-9 in conference. Give me a first round win, and I think you're in. Yes,
I agree.
I do.
Thank you. And we've had a bunch of quad one wins, which has been nice. It seems like when we get to conference play, it sort of gets going in the downward direction. Like I said, roster rotations are terrible. He's got to clean it up. But it's the Big East. That's the thing that, a lot of the times, if you split it, I feel like if you split series, you're doing pretty good when you split them against the Providence of the world. We didn't split Villanova, obviously, but it's the Big East play. And that's another thing. I think we can kind of say the Big East is back. It's not back like it was, but we're a major conference now. Can we all just agree with that?
Oh, no, 100%. And I'm looking at your metrics now, Warren Nolan. 5 wins, quad 1, that's fine. 4-1 against quad 2 is fine. You have the 1 quad 3 loss. You would know better than who was it? Oh, it was DePaul. It was DePaul loss.
Yeah, at home, which was just broke me.
But you do have 24th strength of schedule overall, which is huge.
Yeah.
Yes, I think if you sweep those 3 games and give me 1 win in the Big East tournament, I think you are very 7-10-ish, maybe in a worst case scenario, the play in 12 game. Does that sound about right?
I feel
But
it,
I think you should be in. Yes.
Perfect. I agree. And that was the expectations. We beat Ohio State in a pretty dominant fashion early, and then the fan base went way off. Like, oh, we're going to be amazing. Yep. I was like, expectation was like finish top 5, top 4 in the Big East and make the tournament. Let's not get crazy here. And then it's kind of gone off the rails. Villanova, I know you guys are sort of high on them. They seem to me, out of the Big East at least, and at large, a team, calm, cool, collected under Jay Wright. A team that maybe doesn't have the best stars they've had in the past. Talk to me a little bit about, does the Big East have, whether it's Villanova or another one, that can really kind of take advantage of the tournament and make a push that represents for the conference as a whole? I think it's Villanova, but want to get your thoughts.
I still believe in Providence, but they need to be healthy. They're a Jenga puzzle. If you take Al Durham, they could absolutely lose in round 1. It wouldn't even surprise me. And Nate Watson has to be Nate Watson. Like he's not a great rebounder, which makes no sense, but he is their go-to guy, and he opens up things for the shooters. So I think Providence is okay. I like Nova only because we talked on the podcast about how if you look at their 2 championship years, they have the same profile. They're a veteran team. They don't turn the ball over. They make their free throws. But they also, as Gus pointed out, they don't have the NBA talent that they normally have. Your Jeremiah Robinson era, Mikal Bridges was a freshman that year, Pascal. So they don't have that. I will say this. I am not high on Connecticut.
Really?
I don't.
What about
something's missing. I know they beat Nova, but they shouldn't have. You can't. That's not a foul when they cause a jump ball. They cause a jump ball, and it's not a charge either. But regardless, something is missing with them. I don't trust Sonogo. He's got the shot put hook. It went in, whatever. I would pick them as an early out right now. I would. But again, it comes down to the matchups. Watch them go to the Final Four. But assuming they get an average draw, I think it's Providence and Villanova. I will not give up on Providence. You know that we could be sitting here in an Elite 8 game with the headline, everyone doubted Providence. We absolutely could. And we could also be sitting here with them struggling to knock off, the NEC team. You could see that. So those are I think Shaka kids are a little young, but he's done an outstanding job for them.
I'd agree.
I don't buy into Willard. If you listen to the pod, you know what I think of Willard. And Creighton is just very young, and now they lost Nemhart. So to me, it's Nova or Providence or nothing. I will not have Connecticut going far unless there's some weird draw that they get.
I like that. All right. When you look at the field as a whole, as people are kind of filling out their brackets as we get to that point in the season, what are maybe some teams, a lot of people talk about the Purdues, the Kentuckys, Villanovas, Arizona, Gonzagas. What are the teams that are maybe flying under the radar for you right now that you like, that have potential, as long as some things go right, to maybe make some noise come tournament time, or have a player that we're really going to find out about that maybe we don't know about?
I think you're setting me up here to say Colorado State. I mean, I love my Rams in the Mountain West. They are the true no big with David Roddy inside, who is a power forward-esque shorter center for them and is just the man. I mean, to me, he's the Mountain West Player of the Year. They make threes. They have great guards. Medved does a fantastic job. If they don't lose to Nevada on the last game of the regular season last year, where they gave up the three-pointer, I think they're in the tournament. They all came back because they wanted to be in, and Roddy's elevated his game to a new level. They shoot the three. They're great on offense. They're great on defensive rebounding, and they don't turn the ball over. They have everything you need to make a run here, and no one is going to think of that. Now, I'm not saying they're definitely in. I hope they are, but they have some work left to do. But that's the type of team that I'm looking for. I will also say this. I have come around on UAB. UAB has flown under the radar for a long time. Andy Kennedy went there, and people have sort of forgotten about him. And last year they were kind of like, yeah, they turned people over, but they're not very good. No, they're good. They're very good. They beat a good San Francisco team on a neutral court. They beat St. Louis in a true away game. They battled West Virginia at home earlier. They cause havoc in the half court, much like Shaka's team did back with VCU. Yeah, they're fun to watch. They turn you over. They rebound the ball. They can make threes. they are the pain in the rear. No one in the general population is caring about the Conference USA because they're thinking, oh, North Texas and this and that. They had a nice win against Purdue, but they're not going to go far. No, UAB is a problem because I like teams with styles. That's how Houston got to the Final Four. They have a style. UAB is annoying. They are the flies. They are the beehive around your head. And you could get down. If they're making threes, watch out. They are a quintessential 6-3 upset waiting to happen.
Ooh, I like that. All right. Thank you for that one. I will keep my eye on that one. Here on Trophy Kids, we're always big on trying to give our listeners something different. Now, we know don't give away the secret sauce. People, if you want to be good at filling out your brackets and getting good information, go find Screen and Screen, the podcast on Apple and Spotify, I believe you're on, or am I correct?
Oh, yeah, wherever you hear your podcast. Yep.
Perfect. One thing, ask you, gambling's becoming big. Everybody fills out a bracket. You're a numbers guy and an analytic guy. As people are looking at things, what is maybe something that you utilize that maybe indicates a positive or a negative for a team when you're looking at a matchup, when you're trying to break down something that kind of jumps off the page or a number that people should be looking at maybe?
I make fun of myself for this. I love 3-point percentage defense and 3-point percentage made. Okay. How many upsets can you remember in watching the tournament where the team didn't make threes? In this, normally somebody gets hot. So I love teams that defend, that I don't care if you played a slow pace or a fast pace. I don't really care about that. But I do like a style. I like that something is, Wyoming is very unique in the Mountain West. Mountain West has been terrible for a while. Now with them in Colorado State, all guard alignment, Roddy inside, he can step out. Wyoming, slow, Hunter Maldonado, the throwback scorer, Graham Ike inside, they have a style. So I like 3-point percentage defense, 3-point percentage shooting, so the efficiency on both sides of the ball. And I like a unique style, something that's different. A lot of people blew off Houston last year because they don't have enough offense. They don't have offense. Folks, no one had enough rebounding and defense except for Rutgers, who I loved in that game, and they did cover, but I liked them because they were able to match Houston. They don't care about being physical because that's what they are. They're from New Jersey like me. They're lunch pail. So I'm like, this is not what Houston wants. What does Houston want? The team that you talked about earlier, the run up and down secondary break team. That's what they want. So I look for contrast and styles, and I love 3-point percentage and teams that have unique builds.
I love that. Thank you very much for that. And our listeners will very much appreciate that. And it's so true because the thing that will always be burned into my memory is Steph Curry, who, people who were paying attention knew what was coming there. Maybe not to the degree that happened, but that Davidson team, all I remember is him lighting up threes. I mean, that's true of every team that goes on a run, but that is such a good point because that will forever be burned in my memory.
We were at my wife and I were getting married that year, and we went to the tasting where you go and get to taste the food. And I kept going to the restroom because he's lighting up Georgetown. Just bombing away. And she's like, "There's something on, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah, you gotta see this kid. This kid's unbelievable." But she didn't mind because on our first date, we were watching JJ Redick. So that's just the way it is.
I like that. A saint for it.
Yes, she went to a bar, and I'm like, "Oh," she's like, "Oh, the Duke game's on." Yeah. Said, "Excuse me." Yeah, I almost proposed right there. Yeah,
that's similar to my girlfriend with football. It's like as soon as football season, everything revolves around that, and it's fun. We worked out a scale. Like, how important is this on a scale of 1 to 5 for missing games?
Yes.
And we keep it very similar to that. So I like that.
Yes, that's the way to do it. Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you spending some time here with us. For everybody, you can find Mike Randle Rant on Twitter. You can also find him on the Screener podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. He's all over the place. Make sure to follow. You're definitely going to want to be listening for March Madness. Anything before we go that you want to get out there outside of that?
This was great. We got to do this again. I love it. It's fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. And listen, we are so close. We are so close to March Madness. I'm going to be putting a ton of stuff out for 4for4 football, betting pros, college basketball. We will sleep, as John Rothstein says, in April.
Yes.
In May. We'll sleep in May. Absolutely.
I loved it. Thank you so much again. And I hope we get you back on here sooner than later. So thank you for your time here today.
You got it. Thanks, man.
Thanks. All right.